Hjärtligt välkomna hit. Balochistan, det finns väldigt många människor i Sverige som inte har en aning om var det landet eller nationen eller regionen finns någonstans. Var det ligger någonstans. Det är många som inte vet. Och vi har känt från det liberala partiet i Sverige, från Folkpartiets sida, att det är angeläget att lära sig mer om inte bara hur världen ser ut, utan också hur de områden i världen som på olika sätt är omdiskuterade, där det förekommer konflikter, där det förekommer människor som har det svårt och så vidare, hur de områdena ser ut. Vi är övertygade om att för att kunna formulera en politik som innebär att fred och stabilitet och rättvisa kan råda, så innebär det att man också lite mer på djupet måste förstå och analysera skeenden och tendenser och historien i olika områden i världen. Och det här gör att vi inte alltid är bästa kompisar med de regimer som styr i världen. Vi har fått en hel del kritik från Turkiet för vårt engagemang för kurderna. Vi har fått en hel del kritik från den iranska ledningen i Teheran och iranska företrädare för till exempel att vi lyft olika minoritetsgrupper i Iran, inte minst balocherna och även andra grupper, azerier och andra grupper. Och jag kan tänka mig att det finns en och annan stat som är kritiska till att vi nu lyfter upp balochernas situation, men vi gör det för vi anser att detta är viktigt. Vi har med oss idag ett antal prominenta gäster. First of all, I would like to welcome Mr. Suleiman Ahmedzai. You are nowadays living in London, and you are here in Sweden for this event, and we are very, very glad to have you here. Mr. Ahmedzai is the grandson of the last king of Balochistan, Ahmadiyar Khan, and a very important person and a symbol also for the Balochi cause for self-determination. Och Suleiman kommer att tala en 10-15 minuter och sen han kommer att tala på engelska och jag kommer sammanfatta detta lite kort sen på svenska också efteråt. We also have with us here Mr. Nawabzada Harvey Marri. I hope I pronounced your name correct. You are a Baloch leader in exile, politician, and also residing in London now. You are most welcome here as well, and you will speak, and you will. You have also with you, and we share your time with Angela Harvey, which is a human rights activist, also from UK, United Kingdom. And I guess that you will speak a little bit also about the human rights situation in Balochistan. Och vi har också med oss Maja Åberg från Amnesty Internationals svenska sektion som också kommer att tala lite utifrån hur Amnesty ser på MR-situationen i Balochistan. Sen skulle vi ha med oss också herr Mohammad Akhtar Mengal som bor i Förenade Arabemiraten nu. Och, and he will be with us on Skype instead. Han kommer att vara med oss via Skype. Tyvärr så lyckades vi inte få ett visum i hamn trots att vi kontaktade Sveriges ambassad redan i februari nere i Dubai. Och jag vill också inledningsvis verkligen rikta ett stort tack till Mohammad Zenadini som har hjälpt till oerhört mycket med att få detta seminarium i ordning och verkligen en klippa när det gäller att fixa saker, bjuda in talare och att upplägget fungerar och allting sånt. Och mitt namn är Fredrik Malm, jag är talesperson för Folkpartiet Liberalerna i utrikespolitiska frågor också. Vi har också en riksdagsledamot till med oss med Annika Lillemets. Jag kan presentera dig lite kort också och säga att du är jättevälkommen också. Annika Lillemets, member of parliament from the Green Party also. Så det finns ett antal riksdagsledamöter som är engagerade i dessa frågor. Nu skulle jag gärna vilja lämna ordet till Suleiman Ahmedzai. The floor is yours and you will speak in English and afterwards a short summary also in Swedish. Varsågod.
Mr. Chairman, organizers, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share with you sorrows and pains of the Baloch nation. We are segregated by the occupators, Pakistan and Iran. The recent waves of extrajudicial killing of the Baloch by the Pakistani security forces, the issue of the Baloch right for an independent state is of legitimate international concern and do not constitute exclusively an internal affair of Pakistan. The Iranian theocratic regime denied the Baloch in Iran the basic civil rights, the basic human rights such as freedom of speech, worship, and association are denied to the Baloch. The Iranians have failed to accommodate the Baloch pre-existing cultural, legal, political institutions and traditions. The largest part of Balochistan is under Pakistani control, suffers the worst human rights violations. Balochistan is an occupied land and there are gross violations of human rights, such as genocide, ethnic cleansing, and racial discrimination. The international community has always been aware of the gross violations of human rights on both sides of the Goldsmith lines, but Iranian and Pakistanis have had free rein to suppress the Baloch as they seem fit. The international community has never shown concern about genocide, targeted killings, mass forced disappearances in Balochistan by the states. The states are not providing protection to the Baloch properties and lives. Pakistan is a state formed on prejudice against Hindu, and Iran is a Shia empire. Both states are intolerant towards religious and ethnic minorities. The Iranian and Pakistanis are trying to find a common approach that will weaken the Baloch capacity to challenge the state's power domestically and internationally. The Baloch are victims of forced disappearance and forced assimilation policies. The fact is, human rights institutions and international organizations have failed to protect the Baloch. The sincere desire to find an alternative means to protecting the Baloch human rights is the shell of statehood of independent Balochistan. The Baloch people have always had a state of their own throughout the recorded history. In the sense, the Baloch have unique and outstanding right to re-establish their sovereign state, the same right the Swedish, Norwegians, and other nations in the world are entitled. The fact is, the Baloch nation is a historic nation traditionally settled in the Baloch land for millenniums. The European Union, the international community, and other humanitarian bodies promoting human rights and democracy must recognize Balochistan is an occupied land. We should focus on conflict resolution between Iranian Pakistanis and the Baloch on the basis of legitimate right to independent, united Balochistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmedzai. Och de flesta förstår engelska här kanske. Det kanske inte behövs någon sammanfattning på svenska. Men om du vill så kan man mycket kort sammanfatta det som en övergripande beskrivning av hur Pakistan och Iran på olika sätt inte hanterar den balochiska frågan som man ska. Och han nämner ett antal frågor om assimilering och så att säga dödande av aktivister, nämner också folkmord och så vidare som olika processer som har ägt rum i dessa områden. Han betonar också, Mr. Ahmedzai, att det här inte är någon intern angelägenhet för Iran och Pakistan utan att det är också någonting som berör det internationella samfundet i stort också. Thank you very much. Vi går vidare. Nawab Zada, please.
I would like to thank the organizer of this meeting. This is a very important occasion for us to highlight the extreme violation of human and democratic rights by the occupied states of Pakistan and Iran. This is a significant event since we are gathered here in Stockholm, the capital city of a nation that prides itself for their respect to human rights, liberty, social and economic justice. These are exactly the same values that our Baloch nation has been striving ever since our homeland was illegally occupied by British Imperial Army in 1839. For many decades, Swedish people fought for the same rights and values, but now these rights are a part of social, political, legal, cultural norms, the fabric of your society. For us, we are even forbidden to use our own language in our homeland. It is worth mentioning that our language is one of the oldest languages in the region. An additional irony is currently more academic work and research is going on Balochi language. It is in progress in Sweden than in Balochistan. In past, empires conquered and subjugated other nations at will. This was accepted political norm at that time. The might was right. Subjugation of another nation was regarded as an expression of power and prestige. This is the situation that we Baloch are facing in this century. No doubt there are still many other nations that suffer from subjugation, but not to the same unimaginable degree of atrocity, exploitation, destruction that we presently are encountering in Balochistan. We are a distinctive ancient nation in the same way as the Swedish nation is. We have distinctive history, land, language, culture, moral and social codes and values. We had a sovereign, independent state. Our population is now probably twice as many as the Swedish population. The British Empire invaded our homeland in 1839 using their repressive instrument of divide and rule. They divided our homeland in three parts. We have been resisting occupation and subjugation relentlessly with our limited means and abilities. We pushed out the Persian rulers from western occupied Balochistan by the dawn of First World War, but being reoccupied once again by the Persian dictator Raza Khan Mir Panj in 1928. We regained our independence in eastern Balochistan from the British Empire in August 1947, but our sovereign state was illegally occupied by the newly created artificial Jihadist state of Pakistan in March 1948. Current artificial borders in Balochistan are the legacy of British colonial policies. Baloch people had no say in the matter at all. In the eyes of Baloch people, these colonial borders have no legal moral legitimacy. For that reason, we have never stopped struggling for our legitimate and democratic rights. The Baloch nation, like any other nation, is entitled to be free from illegal occupation. We, the Baloch, like any other nation, such as the Swedish people, should be entitled to establish a democratic state and society where the universal values of liberty, democracy, justice, rule of law, peace and prosperity can be implemented. We Baloch are secular, freedom-loving people in the region that is plagued by fanaticism of Islamic Shia of Iran, the jihadist extremism of Pakistan, and its proxies, the Taliban. We are a small island of secular people that resisted these mindless epidemic religious misadventures. Moreover, we are among the first victims of this destructive curse. When the worst sided and assisted these forces of darkness, we warned them about the consequences of their actions. Our people, however, have been the first victims of these repressive regimes and their religious associates. Our only demand from all fair-minded and decent people in general and Swedish people in particular are to recognize our struggle for our legitimate, natural, democratic and moral rights and assist us to regain our independence. We want the same rights as you find fit for your society and people. That is how to have our own sovereign country and decide about our own future. Restoration and implementation of these rights are not just serving the Baloch national interest, but they serve the interest of all humanity. The most effective way to respect human rights and democracy and to bring stability, security, peace and rule of law in the region would be by ending colonization and illegal occupation of Balochistan and allowing the people, Baloch people, democratically to determine their own affairs and destiny. We Baloch are a tolerant, secular nation. That's why an independent Balochistan will be the natural ally of international secular and democratic nations. It is high time for the international democratic powers to support Baloch in their just struggle for national liberation. We hope the Swedish government and Swedish people will morally help our struggle and raise their voice against the ongoing human rights violations in occupied Balochistan. I thank you all for attending this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nawal Sada. Please, yes.
Well, I'd like to first of all thank the Walker Party for organising such an event. This is a very important event to highlight the human rights violations that exist. In my discussion today, I want to highlight the human rights violations in respect of Eastern Balochistan in particular. Both Suleiman and Hadia have talked about independence and their fight for independence in occupied territory. So it's important to remember that as I speak to you today. International borders, or some international borders, are never completely just. But the degree of injustice that are inflicted on those whose frontiers and forces together or separate ethnic groups make an enormous difference. Often the difference between freedom and oppression, tolerance and atrocity, the rule of law and terrorism, or even peace and war. The most arbitrary and distorted borders in the world exist, say, an example, in Africa and in the Middle East. These borders continue to provoke the deaths of millions in these areas, and these unjust borders generate more trouble than can be consumed. While the Middle East has far more problems than dysfunctional borders alone, the cultural stagnation through scandalous inequality to deadly religious extremism is not what concerns me today. The greatest taboo that is not really talked about is in striving to understand the region's comprehensive failure is not Islam, but an awful but sacrosanct international boundaries that are protected so much by international governments today. This needs to be addressed. Of course, no adjustment of borders, however draconian, could ever make all minority groups happy. But there are significant things that we can do in a government such as Sweden and in governments across Europe and the United States, how we should interact with regimes which will not tolerate democratic means and forms, who violate human rights. It's important for us to address those. I think it's important to mention, as Hadia and Suleiman have already done, that Balochistan did enjoy independence, and that it was Pakistan who wanted Balochistan to join in with them. But both houses of parliament in Balochistan rejected the calls for Balochistan to join them. And of course, as we've heard today, that Balochistan was invaded and the force was used to annex Balochistan. So, now I come to the main issue. Enforced disappearances is defined in Article 2 of the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons and Enforced Disappearances, which the UN General Assembly adopted in December 2006 as the arrest, detention, abduction, or any other form of deprivation of liberty by agents of the state or by persons or groups of persons acting with the authorization, support, or acquiescence of the state, followed by a refusal to acknowledge the deprivation of liberty or by concealment of their fate or whereabouts. This is what's happening today in Pakistan. In May 2008, Pakistan stated that it would accede to this convention. However, even without ratifying or acceding to the convention, Pakistan is still bound by the prohibition of enforced disappearances, which is the rule of customary international law. Pakistan should follow the standards set out in the 1992 General Assembly by the UN Declaration of the Protection of Persons and Enforced Disappearances, which, although non-binding, reflects the consensus of the international community against this type of human rights violation. This provides an authoritative guide as to the safeguards that they must implement in order to prevent ongoing enforced disappearances and the killing and dumping that's going on in Pakistan today. So, acts of enforced disappearance also violate several provisions within Pakistan's constitution. So it doesn't only affect the conventions in terms of human rights law, which include freedom from arbitrary detention, right to judicial overview of detentions, and to human dignity, and prohibition of torture, as well as constituting criminal offences. This is not what is happening on the ground today. There are ongoing human rights concerns in Pakistan, and these include a dramatic increase in the killings across southwestern province of Balochistan, continuing torture, ill-treatment of suspects, intimidation and attacks on normal civilians in Balochistan and across the media, including human rights activists and journalists. There is a need for the international community to put pressure on Pakistan to ensure its adherence to its commitments. Its commitments that it made as part of a universal periodic review that was in 2008, and in respect of its adherence to international human rights law and conventions. So, across Balochistan since January 2011, at least 400 people have been abducted and killed and their bodies abandoned. Acts widely referred to as kill and dump operations, in which Pakistan's security forces engaged in counterinsurgency operations are responsible. Assailants have also carried out targeted killings of opposition leaders, human rights activists, and the general public. This is important. So it's not just the opposition leaders, we're not just talking about the carrying out on specific set, but a whole community, the whole Baloch community within eastern Balochistan is affected. The surge in unlawful killings in Balochistan has taken the brutality in the province to unprecedented levels. This is why we need to act. For example, in the first 10 days of July 2011, 9 bullet-riddled bodies, several of them bearing marks of torture, were discovered in the province. Just to give you a flavour. In June 2011, Sabadashti Yari, a professor at the University of Balochistan and an acclaimed Baloch writer and poet, was shot dead by unidentified gunmen in the provincial capital, Quetta. Dashtawi had publicly backed the cause of independence in Balochistan. Saturday, the bullet-riddled body of a journalist, Bazuk Gul, was found dumped in the desert area near Turbat city in Kesh district. At least 17 journalists have been killed in Balochistan during the last 3 years. The relatives of the Express News correspondent said that he had been kidnapped from near his home on Friday evening and had been missing since then. In Balochistan, Pakistan's security forces, particularly its intelligence agencies, targeted and enforced disappearances of many ethnic Baloch suspected of involvement in the Baloch Nationalist Party movement. Abductions are carried out in broad daylight, often in busy public areas across all walks of life, and people are affected day to day. They don't know if they're going to be arrested. There may be multiple witnesses, and victims are taken away from very public places. Victims of enforced disappearances come from all walks of life and background, not just young men, that's important to note, but children, women and elderly have also become the victims of these enforced disappearances. People appear to have been targeted because of their tribal affiliations or ethnicity, especially when a particular tribe, such as the Bukti or Bengal tribe, have been involved in getting and seeking the rights for their own people, the rights that Swedish people will enjoy today, democratic rights. Witnesses frequently describe their perpetrators of enforced disappearances as armed men in civilian clothes, usually arriving in four-door pickup trucks. Witnesses typically refer to these assailants as representatives of the agencies, a term commonly used to describe the intelligence agencies, including the Directorate for Inter-Services Intelligence, that's ISI, Military Intelligence, MI, and the Intelligence Bureau, IB. In many cases, the abductions were carried out by and in the presence of uniformed personnel of the Frontier Corps and Interior Ministry Parliamentary Force. Police were often seen assisting to secure the area, so also involved in these despotic acts. In all cases, such disappearances were documented by human rights organisations. Okay, it's evident that members of the security forces did not identify themselves, explain the basis of the arrest, or where they were taking the apprehended. Often instead, they would beat their victims and drag them handcuffed and blindfolded into vehicles. Often these people would disappear and their bodies would be found on open ground, tortured, mutilated bodies. It's time to act. So, that gives a small flavour of some of the human rights violations. Okay? We're talking now about, quickly, about the freedom of expression. The right to freedom of expression that Swedish people would enjoy today, and something that the police would want for their own community. Okay? This is something that is not possible on a formal basis in Balochistan. It is very, very difficult to have a freedom or access to Balochistan, and to report from there. It is very difficult to get data from there outside in terms of independent data. Okay, and I would call upon international community to support independent investigation of the violations, human rights violations that are going on in Balochistan today. There is a climate of fear which impedes media coverage of the military in Pakistan, and journalists are rarely able to report on human rights abuses by the military. Security forces have physically attacked media offices and are known to torture, kidnap, and legally detain and beat or coerce reporters working for local, regional, and national media. So recommendations, quickly. Regarding extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances, there is a need for the international community to act and call for an independent investigation into the enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings, and arbitrary detentions in Pakistan. Rights Convention, and they need to be held to account. Pakistan government needs to take immediate measures to end enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings and arbitrary detentions, and fully investigate and prosecute as appropriate all persons regardless of what their position or rank is, who carry out such abuses. Public remains and whereabouts of detainees, that is crucial. Provide immediate access to International Committee of the Red Cross to all detainees in order that they are found that they are not being tortured and they are treated humanely. Charge detainees with recognizable criminal offences if this is appropriate. If not, they must meet international standards in regards to actually releasing them. If they can't if they can't find anything to charge them on. If they do charge them, they need to provide fair trial standards that meet international community standards, allow detainees access to lawyers and to communicate with their family members. I call on Pakistan to ratify the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearances, invite the United Nations Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial and summary or arbitrary executions to visit Pakistan and make its findings public. That is important. Finally, in regards to the freedom of expression, end the harassment, intimidation, use of coercion, violence and other abuses against members of the media by the state security. Allow independent investigations by the media. Let us hold Pakistan to account for violations. This is important. Seek out, those who are committing the atrocities and prosecute them under the human rights law, and make sure that we do hold Pakistan to account. Last but not least, document through international mechanisms the intelligence agencies' interaction with media. There needs to be a greater transparency, and journalists should be allowed to be free to report in respect of human rights abuses at all times. Thank you very much indeed for listening.
De sa åt mig att jag måste stå mera i mitten. They told me I have to stand here more in the middle, otherwise there will be interference with the sound here from the computer and the högtalaranläggningen, som det heter. Jag ska ge en kort sammanfattning på svenska av vad herr Maja Åberg och Angela Harvey sa. För det första så betonade nu ska vi se, Åberg väldigt tydligt att det pågår extrema övergrepp mot mänskliga rättigheter i Balochistan, något som vi redan vet givetvis, men han betonade detta. Han talade om att vikten för den balochiska befolkningen är att man strävar efter samma sak som vi har i Sverige, frihet och demokrati och rättvisa och så vidare. Han talar om att vi i Balochistan, säger han, är förbjudna att använda vårt språk fritt, trots att vårt språk är ett av de äldsta språken i regionen. Han betonade att balocherna också är en stor befolkning, sannolikt kanske dubbelt så stor som den svenska befolkningen, och också förtjänar sin plats i den internationella miljön och den internationella debatten och den internationella uppmärksamheten. Han talar om att balocherna har kämpat dels mot britterna men också mot den iranska teokratiska regimen och även mot den pakistanska staten. Han menar att balocherna hade ingen röst under den brittiska kolonialismen, och eftersom man inte tillfrågades om sin framtid, eftersom man inte inkluderades på något sätt i den politiska processen, så innebär det också att de gränser som idag har dragits upp saknar en legitimitet för balocherna på det sättet, därför att man inte själv har fått vara delaktig i detta. Och han avslutar med att det viktigaste för fred och rättvisa och stabilitet och en positiv framtid i Balochistan är att kolonialismen avslutas fullt ut. som den gjorde för Indien 1947, men det måste också avslutas för Baluchistan. Sa han avslutningsvis. Och Angela Harvey, hon talade om människorättsövergrepp i Pakistan också. Inga gränser är rättvisa, betonade hon, och klargjorde också hur gränser ofta separerar människor och skapar krig och problem och bekymmer och så vidare. Och betonade särskilt situationen i Afrika och Mellanöstern i de olika gränsproblem som har funnits på olika sätt. Skapat konflikter och annat. Hon betonade att Baluchistan hade självständighet och att balucherna sa nej till att ansluta sig till Pakistan tidigare på 40-talet. Hon refererar till olika FN-konventioner, eller huvudsak en från mitten av 2000-talet som Pakistan har undertecknat, samt också till skrivningar i Pakistans konstitution som klargör att tortyr är förbjudet, att man inte får godtyckligt arrestera människor och så vidare, och menar att Pakistan följer inte detta, vilket också har påpekats av Förenta Nationernas råd för mänskliga rättigheter i det som heter Universal Periodic Review, som kommer var 3:e år om varje land. Hon ger sedan en rad konkreta exempel, jag behöver inte gå igenom alla, men hon gav en rad konkreta exempel som vi har hört. Om journalister som försvinner, som sen dyker upp bak på någon truck, som sen hamnar lemlästade, stympade, torterade i någon park någonstans. Hon menar att 17 journalister har dödats i Baluchistan de senaste 3 åren. Och hon menar att avslutningsvis också så radar hon upp en rad konkreta åtgärder hon anser att det internationella samfundet bör vidta. Och en av de sakerna som hon också menar är viktigt är att det finns oberoende observatörsteam som kan åka till Baluchistan, därför att det finns inte någon, vad ska man säga, reliable data, tror jag hon sa, eller hon sa independent data och så vidare, som gör att man faktiskt kan veta hur situationen verkligen är i Baluchistan och så. Jag försökte, detta var något sån här en sammanfattning på svenska av vad talarna sa. Det är alltid bra, friskar vi upp vårt minne också. Nu välkomnar vi Maja Åberg från Svenska Amnesty också. Varsågod.
Tack så mycket för att jag har fått komma hit. And thank you so much to all of the previous speakers, especially to Angela. You said everything I was going to say, so now I don't know what to say. Jag har ändå sagt att jag ska prata på svenska, so I guess I'll say some of the same things and I'll say them in Swedish. Jag kommer också att börja fokusera lite grann på Pakistan och sen också prata en del om Iran i slutet. Amnesty anser att det är en kris för de mänskliga rättigheterna, en MR-kris som pågår i Baluchistan, som inte uppmärksammas av världen och som inte ens uppmärksammas i Pakistan heller. Statens oförmåga och eller ovilja att försöka göra någonting åt den här situationen och att man är en del av problemet, att man vägrar att ställa de som är skyldiga till de här kränkningarna av mänskliga rättigheter inför rättvisa, har gjort att civilbefolkningen i Baluchistan lever med en känsla av hopplöshet och bitterhet. Vi har pratat om många av de extremt grova kränkningar av mänskliga rättigheter som pågår. Utomrättsliga avrättningar, påtvingade försvinnanden, tortyr, olika former av övergrepp. Men man ska också komma ihåg att invånarna i den här regionen lever med kränkningar av många andra rättigheter också. Man lever med diskrimineringen. Man lever med dålig eller ingen tillgång till utbildning, till hälso- och sjukvård, ibland till energi, infrastruktur, arbetstillfällen, många andra saker som gör att situationen blir ännu svårare. Och detta trots att det här är en region som har naturtillgångar på så sätt. Det finns många olika väpnade grupper i området som utsätter civilbefolkningen för många av de här övergreppen med total strafffrihet. Och det har tidigare talare också varit inne på. Det är ingen som ställs inför rätta för de här brotten. Man kan fortsätta, det blir en ond cirkel av Att man vet att man kan utföra den här tortyren, man kan göra så här med människor och ingenting kommer att hända för att stoppa den här onda cirkeln. Och det är definitivt statens ansvar att ta tag i det här. För så som Amnesty ser det så kommer det kommer inte ske någon förändring så länge de här olika väpnade grupperna och framförallt säkerhetstjänsten kan fortsätta med helt lösa tyglar och göra precis som de vill. De personer som är offer för de här människorättskränkningarna vågar ofta inte heller vittna om det de har varit med om. De vågar inte anmäla, de vågar inte. Ibland berättar man för internationella organisationer som Anonym. Amnesty får till exempel mycket vittnesmål. Men många av de här personerna är för skrämda eller för hotade för att ens våga berätta om det de har varit med om de överhuvudtaget överlever det. Det kan ofta vara förenat med dödsfara för dem själva. Eller för familjemedlemmar som också kan råka extremt illa ut, både att bli fängslade, bortförda och i sista hand såklart dödade. Vi har hört ett antal olika siffror på personer som har blivit dödade. Amnesty har en siffra mellan 24 oktober 2010 och 10 september 2011. Alltså på ungefär lite mindre än ett år. Där de fall som vi har kunnat bekräfta, och det här är alltså bara fall som vi har kunnat bekräfta, så att den egentliga antalet och siffran kan vara mycket högre. Men vi har kunnat bekräfta att minst 249 balochiska aktivister, journalister, jurister, lärare har antingen blivit dödade eller bortförda och sitter nu på ställen där man ofta inte vet ifall de lever eller är döda och var de befinner sig. Angela var också inne på det här med att personer blir tillfångatagna och sen så dyker de upp ett antal veckor eller månader senare. På engelska så har vi kallat det här för kill and dump, att döda eller dumpa på svenska. Där man då släpper de här personerna någonstans där de sen hittas fulla med kulhål och ofta spår av tortyr. Och många av de här bortförandena har ju då bevittnats av människor så att man vet att de här personerna togs av till exempel medlemmar av säkerhetstjänsten. Det finns många vittnen på det. Men när man sen försöker ställa säkerhetstjänsten till svars så brukar de skylla ifrån sig och säga att nej, men de här personerna har dött på grund av rivaliserande balochiska grupper och deras stridigheter. Det är ingenting som har med oss att göra. Så att det finns liksom ingen möjlighet att ställa de här personerna inför rätta eller ställa dem till svars. Jag ska också säga att det finns kritik även mot väpnade balochiska grupper som även de har anklagats för kränkningar av mänskliga rättigheter. Bland annat för dödandet av icke-balochiska civilpersoner då. Bland annat urdu eller punjabi-talande människor som har dödats och där man ibland misstänker att deras enda brott var att de hade fel kulturell bakgrund eller talade fel språk. Nu har jag pratat om situationen i Pakistan och vi har hört mycket om det från de tidigare talarna. Jag skulle också vilja nämna att Amnesty följer situationen även i Iran och Afghanistan. Några av de första talarna pratade om situationen i Iran och tog upp just de problem som drabbar personer där, och det handlar då om ytterst begränsad yttrandefrihet, mötesfrihet, organisationsfrihet, rätten till sitt språk och sin kultur. Alla de här olika rättigheterna är antingen starkt begränsade eller i vissa fall helt icke befintliga. Så att det finns problem även där, och för de av er som följer nyheterna så var det bara för några dagar sedan så rapporterades det om protester i Sistan, Balochistan, som hade bemötts med våld och kulor, med minst ett dödsfall och flera dödade också. Så att ja, jag vet att de flesta av er följer situationen. Möjligen så kan jag också säga ett ord, eftersom vi befinner oss i Sverige och det har varit en stor diskussion i medierna och bland allmänheten under våren om svensk vapenexport. Att Pakistan också är ett av de länder dit Sverige exporterar krigsmateriel för ganska stora summor och att det också har lyfts väldigt mycket i diskussionen i medierna, till exempel om problemen med att göra vapenaffärer med länder där den här typen av massiva kränkningar av mänskliga rättigheter förekommer. Så, jag tror jag avslutar.
The question arises that Baloch people are engaged in kidnapping and disappearances. First of all, what is the understanding of Amnesty International from Balochistan? Balochistan is a wide area. One part is non-Baloch area, the other part is the Baloch area. We have to distinguish between these two. When there are kidnapping, who did it? Baloch people did it, Baloch political activists did it, or it happened in, they go in Balochistan. So there is a distinction with that Amnesty International or any humanitarian organization needs to address. I know it is the commitment of Amnesty International not to discriminate against Baloch and non-Baloch, but because Pakistan wants to portray that the Baloch movement is involved in violation of human rights, so it needs to be addressed as well.
Thank you. I'll clarify. What I was referring to was regarding the Balochistan province in Pakistan, and there are certain armed Balochistani groups that have been accused of some of these killings. And this is something that Amnesty International has reported on, but it was particularly in Pakistan and only from certain armed groups. So it's not something that we say is part of the Baluchi movement as such or as whole, but that there are reports about this having happened. And so for us, it would not make sense not to talk about it at all because there is enough evidence to mention it. But looking at the whole scale of all of the human rights violations in the area in Pakistan, the human rights violations committed by security forces, for example, are on a much larger scale, and also because it is the state of Pakistan that has the responsibility to protect its inhabitants. Obviously, that is a huge problem, but I feel that it would not be credible for me as Amnesty to completely not mention that there are reports of human rights violations on the other side too. But like I said, certain armed groups, not the movement as whole.
Lång tid. Sverige är ett litet land, men vi är mycket engagerade i FN, i Europeiska unionen och på olika sätt. Men det finns vissa konflikter som får ett oerhört stort fokus. Och det finns andra konflikter och situationer och folk som nästan inte uppmärksammas alls. Och om man tittar till exempel på den enorma fokusering som Israel-Palestina-konflikten får i svensk media och så jämför man det med Balochistan eller man jämför med, inte vet jag, det finns massor med områden där det sker otroligt mycket, inte minst i Kina, Xinjiang-provinsen till exempel, eller i Filippinerna eller i Latinamerika, i afrikanska konflikter som nästan aldrig uppmärksammas. I den bemärkelsen jag delar din synpunkt verkligen. Några konflikter får ett enormt stor uppmärksamhet i svensk media, medan andra får betydligt mindre. Men det enda jag kan säga är att vi har fria medier i Sverige, vi har yttrandefrihet. Så kontakta journalister, skriv artiklar, skriv insändare, skapa sidor på internet, uppmärksamma, använd den data Amnesty har och andra organisationer och försök uppmärksamma det så mycket ni kan. Det finns ingen annan väg att gå, tror jag. Ordna seminarier och så vidare. Det här mötet är ett försök att öka uppmärksamheten kring den balochiska frågan, vill jag säga också, från vår sida.
Varsågod. Jag har en kort fråga till dig. Till mig? Ja, okej. Ni som sitter i regeringen. Ja. Vi vet att Pakistans regering, eller Pakistan, lever på bistånd från utlandet. Speciellt Europa och USA. Och som vi vet, USA har minskat sitt bistånd till Pakistan en tredjedel. Och sen Sverige, Norge och andra europeiska länder ger bistånd i form av pengar och vapen till Pakistan. Och de använder pengarna och vapen mot Balocherna i Balochistan. Vad kan ni göra konkret mot det här systemet? Det här falska systemet som finns?
Kan vi röra ur den där sladden till som du satt in sist?
Precis, ja.
Nej,
Inte den.
det var inte den sladden.
Och speciellt att hjälpa Balocherna att befria sig från den här situationen.
Jag kan svara mycket kort på detta. Sverige har inte genomgått några vapenaffärer med Pakistan sedan 2007. Post Musharraf så har vi inte genomgått några. Men det är fakta så att säga. Och med den förmodade skärpning av krigsmaterielexportlagstiftningen som kommer att ske inom ett antal år. Det ska utredas först och så, men den förmodade skärpningen lär väl inte underlätta så att säga vapenaffärer med ett land som Pakistan, det tror jag inte. När det gäller biståndet så är vår uppfattning, kan jag säga från Folkpartiets sida i alla fall, och vår uppfattning är att när det handlar om odemokratiska stater, då ska vårt bistånd i huvudsak stödja de som verkar för demokrati. Vi är mycket kritiska till att ge bistånd direkt till diktaturer. Sverige har gjort det, men vi gör det mindre idag än tidigare. Dock tror jag att den typen av säkerhetssamarbete och annat som finns från betydligt större stater än Sverige, kopplat till situationen i Pakistan, situationen i Afghanistan, situationen i gränsområdena, Swatdalen, Waziristan och så vidare. Det ligger så att säga på en nivå ovanför det här huset. Jag tror att den typen av relationer har en större inverkan på situationen i Pakistan än vad det svenska utvecklingssamarbetet har. Men jag tycker det är så.
People were protesting in a democratic way at state. There were many parties who did not contest in Pakistani parliamentary system, but they were asking for independence of Balochistan. They have been pushed away. They have been forced to go to mountains to ask for the independence. The reason is, and that's a classical example I can give, Ghulam Mohammad Sheikh. He was the president of BNM, Balochistan National Movement, and he was picked up in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, in April, and after 8 days his body was found, along with Lala Munir and Sher Mohammad Baloch. Sher Mohammad was vice president of ERB party, and Lala Munir was vice president of BNM. So if someone is asking for independence in that country, occupied Balochistan, Pakistan state has got one answer: pick them up, torture them, and then kill and dump. So nobody is out there to speak out in open, because there are about 14,000 people who are missing, who advocate independence of Balochistan. The only option is left people to go either abroad, hide somewhere, become refugees, or go to mountains, hide over there, or protect themselves. And there's one option left to resist, and that option has been given by Pakistan. There's no, Baloch are not themselves going, and then we are portrayed as terrorists fighting. Yes, we have been occupied by the Pakistanis and by the Iranians, but we have not been left with any options. I personally would like to speak about independence of Balochistan, and only independence, not less than that, because they occupied my country. Balochistan was occupied by Iranians and by Pakistanis. But they have not left us with any option. Again, we peacefully ask for, in a democratic way, we ask for independence, they pick us up, torture us, and dump dead bodies in deserted areas. So what can the Baloch do? And Amnesty International is an organization, we all respect their work. But blaming or saying that Baloch are doing this, yes, there might be some incidents. But the thing is, we have to look at the power. It's the 5th largest army in the world, which is it has got a lot of weapons in its arsenal, and it's using all of it against the Baloch people. The maximum Baloch might have a gun or pistol, something like that, to defend their home and their home sanctity. That's the thing. But they come, I belong to Kahan, my ancestors are from Kahan. That city or the town is deserted. There were about 5,000 people, but they used helicopter gunships, F-16s, and artillery. I'm talking about 2002 and 2003, 2004, and now there's no one over there. And those people moved to Nasirabad district in Balochistan. When United Nations tried to help those people, even the NGOs were not stopped from doing this. And one of that person who was working for NGO, I forgot his name, Rashid Malm from the same tribe, Rashid Malm, he was shot dead about a year ago because he was telling the international community these refugees need help. They don't spare NGOs, they don't spare Amnesty people. From Makran, Ido was an Amnesty personnel, he was shot dead. So they do not spare Baloch who advocate independence. We are left with no other option but to come to the international forums and speak about our independence. Because we are not going to go back from what we say. And we want the international community to come forward and speak that Baloch are being targeted, they are being killed, they are being tortured, and the fact is our land was occupied by these guys.
Okay, what to go?
Again, my question is to the panelists, guys. My question is to the panel, the leaders, that Pakistan and Iran portrays that Baloch people have no capability of governance for themselves. How do you respond to the international community that are Baloch capable of working with the international community in a good relation? Are they able to bring peace and stability in the region if Balochistan independent issue comes before them as you seek for support?
When we were defending ourselves from Mughals and Mongols and all, I think Pakistan was not there to help us. Pakistan is a creation which is just 60 or it was created 60 years ago. And our history says that we had political boundaries or borders in 17th and 18th century. Nasir Khan Noori had made this political borders of Balochistan. We had diplomatic relation in 17th and 18th century with the Ottoman Empire. The Baloch people had that. So how come they say we cannot sustain when 80% of Pakistan or 90% of Pakistan natural gas is being extracted from Balochistan? Reykjavik and Sandak gold and copper projects are situated in Balochistan, and all the wealth is being taken to Punjab, all the Chinese are taking it away. So they are sustaining on Baloch wealth, they are progressing, their prosperity depends on Baloch wealth and Baloch coastal area. And how come we will not prosper with our own wealth when we are only about 20 million people? And they are 150 million Pakistanis. They're prospering on our wealth. So it's illogical to say these kind of things. It might be a political stunt or propaganda against the Baloch people. We are self-sufficient. We have got intellectuals. We can run a country, and our leaders have done for 400 years. So it's I suppose they're making false kind of propaganda against the Baloch.
Mr. Harvey, you yourself have been a member of the provincial assembly in Balochistan and Minister. Can you say your own experience for the tribe, your right in the case?
My experience as being a minister in Balochistan.
And trying to get your rights on the democratic.
That's why usually I say that's why I'm sitting abroad, and I've been in exile when I was a child with my father for 12 years. Now, again, for another 13 years, I've been away from my country because I've seen the power corridors over there, and over there they try to bribe us or give us the wealth as individuals, as leaders of Baloch, but they do not want the progress to be trickled to the people of Balochistan. So they want to corrupt us, the leadership of Balochistan, as there are many. So I did not see any future in those parliament, Balochistan parliament, which is an occupied territory. So I would still say that made me decide, and it gave me more like strength to work for independence and for the people, not through those parliaments, Pakistani parliaments, because it was just a mode of corrupting even the best Baloch, who were never attracted to money and power, but they have got a whole system of doing that. Even not only in occupied Balochistan, all over Pakistan, corruption is a lifestyle, and they try to corrupt us to forget our identity, our people's prosperity, or talk about our future. When we do that, we end up in prison or dead.
Some parties from Western Balochistan, especially Balochistan People Party, believe that they can solve Balochistan problem issue in West Balochistan, West occupied Balochistan, by they believe that they can solve by struggling for a federal system. But you have federal system in Pakistan. The East Balochistan annexed it forcefully by Pakistan as a federal system. How do you think about that? It's work for Iranian Balochistan, not work for Balochistan, Pakistan Balochistan federal system. What do you think about this system? Is it a solution for West Balochistan, but not East Balochistan?
The fact is, again, as you have answered your own question, the way we have been occupied. When a nation has been occupied, then we try to, in ordinary man's language or layman's language, it's a forced marriage. And we need separation. And there's no justice in that forced marriage. They have imposed their will upon the Baloch people, Iranians and the Pakistanis. So there's no way they look at us as slaves. That's the truth. I've lived there. They do not look at us as equals. If they had that kind of attitude, maybe the Baloch people, if I would have said, let's go for independence, the Baloch people would have said, here, we have got all the rights the Persians have, we have got all the rights the Punjabis have. What are you talking about? But they know. Now they've got new designs. They're bringing millions of Persians and outsiders from in Balochistan. Ethnic flooding is going on. They want to make us minority in our own homeland. And once that's been done, that's accomplished, we'll have no voice, as we have no voice today. But at least in my town, there are more Baloch faces or people than somebody from the occupiers. So I would say Eastern occupied Balochistan, Western occupied Balochistan, we should have one thing clear in our mind. They will, if we treat them equal, they won't treat us equal. They won't treat us on the same basis. They will always look upon us as their subjects or their slaves. So there's no other way, in my view, independence is the only way.